Hello everyone. So we were discussing the ramus of the mandible. We had said that it has a lower border, an angle, a posterior border, an anterior border, and a superior border. And we have completed the attachment of the masseter on the lateral surface and the head of the mandible and the condylar process and the temporomandibular joint and the attachment of the lateral ligament of the mandible, lateral ligament of the temporomandibular joint. And we have seen that this coronoid process gives attachment to the temporalis muscle on its anterior border, apex, and part of both medial and lateral surfaces. And this posterior border of the ramus of the mandible is related to the parotid gland, because behind the mandible here you have the tympanic plate and the pinna of the external ear, and behind that somewhere here you have the mastoid process, and between the mandible and the mastoid process this is actually the space or the depression for the parotid mold. So to the posterior border of the ramus of the mandible you have the parotid gland. Not only that, the parotid gland extends over the lateral surface of the ramus of the mandible and over the masseter. So over the masseter again here you have an outpouring of the parotid gland. So the parotid gland is actually indented or pushed into by the posterior border of the ramus. So there is a part of the parotid gland bulging over here on the outer surface of the ramus. There is a part of the parotid gland bulging on the inner surface of the ramus. There is a part of the parotid gland bulging behind the temporomandibular joint. A part beneath the pinna and the external auditory, the tympanic plate and the cartilage of the external auditory meatus, and a part bulging backward towards the mastoid process, and a part of the parotid gland bulging medially towards the styloid process and the wall of the pharynx. Not only that, behind the neck of the mandible you have the emergence of the auriculotemporal nerve and the superficial temporal vessels, because you see the external carotid artery has entered the parotid gland and split into a maxillary artery and a superficial temporal artery, of which the superficial temporal artery will go up in this direction behind the ramus of the mandible. And from deep inside the mandible you have the emergence of the auriculotemporal nerve, which is destined to supply the parotid gland as well as give cutaneous branches to the temporal region and go up to supply the scalp. So auriculotemporal nerve, superficial temporal vessels, they are all related to the posterior border of the ramus of the mandible. So a lot of structures on the external surface of both the body of the mandible and the ramus of the mandible. And again, because you have the masseter over here, we know that the facial artery enters the face just in front of the masseter, and somewhere here you can feel the pulsation of the facial artery. The facial artery followed by the facial vein and the cervical branch of the facial nerve, because if you have the parotid gland over here, then the branches of the facial nerve are also going to emerge through the parotid gland, of which the cervical branch of the facial nerve is expected to go down and supply the platysma and cross the border, the lower border of the body of the mandible somewhere here. So again, the lower border of the body of the mandible is related to tortuous facial artery, a straighter facial vein, and the cervical branch of the facial nerve. Now let us look at the inner surface. If we look at the inner surface of the body of the mandible, again you can see an oblique line just like the outer surface, but this oblique line is called the mylohyoid line. It extends, as you can see, from just below and behind the third molar tooth, passing obliquely forward and downward close to the midline, descending almost up to the midline but not quite. Exactly in the midline you have a depression just behind, and it is on either side of the midpoint, and this depression is the digastric fossa. It is for the attachment of the anterior belly of the digastric, of which you know the posterior belly is attached to a groove for the digastric just medial to the mastoid process of the temporal bone. And you know the two bellies of the digastric and the intermediate tendon are going to form the boundaries of the digastric triangle. And the anterior belly of the digastric and posterior belly of the digastric have separate nerve supplies, as we are going to see subsequently. Just behind the middle of the body of the mandible, you have two elevations, two pairs of elevations rather, one pair above, one pair below. They are called the superior and inferior genial tubercles, of which the superior pair of genial tubercles give rise to the genioglossus muscle, and the inferior pair of genial tubercles gives attachment to geniohyoid. So genioglossus, geniohyoid, and anterior belly of the digastric from the digastric fossa. And this genioglossus muscle is going to form the major bulk of the tongue muscle over here. So you have genioglossus forming the bulk of the tongue and geniohyoid going down into the hyoid bone. And you have this oblique mylohyoid line coming right up to the digastric fossa. And to this mylohyoid line is attached the mylohyoid muscle. So mylohyoid line, mylohyoid muscle, and below the mylohyoid is this groove, which is called the mylohyoid groove, and through this mylohyoid groove passes mylohyoid vessels and nerves, which inevitably are going to supply the mylohyoid and also anterior belly of digastric. So anterior belly of the digastric is supplied by the nerve to mylohyoid, posterior belly of digastric is supplied by the posterior or branch of the facial nerve. So the posterior branch of the facial nerve immediately after arising from the stylomastoid foramen supplies stylohyoid and posterior belly of digastric, that is the posterior auricular branch of the facial. Now this mylohyoid line has separated the inside of the body of the mandible into two triangles, one above, one below. This triangular area above is called the sublingual fossa, and it is related to the sublingual salivary glands. And this triangular region below the mylohyoid line is called the submandibular fossa, which again is related to the submandibular salivary gland. So mylohyoid line and mylohyoid groove separating sublingual fossa above from the submandibular fossa below. And again, just behind the third molar tooth over here, you have the relation of the lingual nerve. So the lingual nerve is related somewhere here, and the alveolar margin just behind the third molar tooth may occasionally be swollen, bulged and enlarged, in which case it is known as the mandibular torus. And you know, from the outside of this alveolar arch, you have just by the side of the three molar teeth, you have the attachment of the buccinator from the outside, and it comes back behind the third molar to this point, from where you have the pterygomandibular raphe going to the pterygoid hamulus, and you again have the attachment of the superior constrictor muscle, inferior constrictor muscle rather. So the inferior constrictor muscle has a small patch of attachment over here, and also the pterygomandibular raphe, from which anteriorly you have the attachment of the buccinator and posteriorly you have the attachment of the superior constrictor muscle, not inferior, sorry, superior constrictor muscle. So you have the attachment of the superior constrictor muscle on this side and the buccinator muscle on this side of the pterygomandibular raphe. Now you come to the ramus of the mandible over here. If you come to the ramus of the mandible, again it has an upper border, it has a lower border, it has a posterior border, it has an anterior border, and you can again see the condylar process and you can see the coronoid process. And on the medial side of the ramus of the mandible, you can see this big opening. This is called the mandibular foramen, guarded by the lingula. So we will stop here and go into the next video.